It's the weekend again. No, actually it's not. It's Friday. It's a public holiday. So I'm out in the shed. It's not too cold today because it's a bit of a wet and rainy day, so it's not icy, which means I can have my diesel heater on. And I've been playing with the Riley during the week after work. I've got the bonnet sort of trimmed up. It's still got a bend in it, so it doesn't stay down by itself. It still needs to be sort of pulled down. The tape's not strong enough to do it, but when you do, it fits nicely now. I've got the side cut out for the exhaust. I have folded a edge underneath, just a simple fold over. I didn't try to do any joggles or anything fancy like that because trying to get them to line up is going to be quite difficult, so I'm just going for the let it wrap over, which is, I mean, exactly how the back of the doors are done and exactly how the boot lid is done. These cars were made to race, so I don't think they were too particular about panel fit on the racing cars, at least. But I've been looking at the doing the louvres in the side, and again, this is one of these things where I've been looking at all of my reference photos, period photos, to try and find out what is correct, and the answer is pretty much anything. They're all different. In period, it seemed a lot of the cars, I think it was more the touring cars, the bonnets had a catch in the middle. It might have just been the earlier cars. So there's a catch in the middle for the bonnet, and then two groups of louvres either side with a gap in the middle. Other cars have catches on the sides and just a straight block of them. The height or the length of them is all over the place, but for this car I'm going to go with more or less what Joss did on 8075 when he rebuilt the bonnet for that. It's a bit hard to get accurate measurements from photos that are taken at strange angles, but comparing those with period photos, the length seemed to be from anywhere from sort of 6-inch long to about 8 or 9-inch long. So it's just a matter of making what looks right. I've decided on about 7 inches. I need to just check there's enough clearance. It's pretty tight in here, but I think it'll work. And the standard number seemed to be 20 across. And then the other side, this side's easy because it's a flat panel. The other side gets a little bit interesting because of the exhaust. On the cars with the single cast exhaust, where the exhaust actually comes out down the bottom here rather than this sort of 4-into-1 system, then there's just a straight block. Again, they're all different. They're all over the place. And this is looking in period. If you start looking at replicas or reproductions or restored cars, the variation gets even worse. So again, I think it's one of these cases of it's a Brooklands thing. They're all different. So I'm looking at doing 7. They'll end up being slightly different heights on either side of the car because of the way I've got the panel, but there is actually an original car where they are different heights on either side, so that's not a problem. It's not like you can see both sides at the same time, so nobody's going to notice. It just needs to look even on that side of the car. So I think I can get a group of them there, group of them at the back, and then that line of 20 across the other side. The other thing is on the race cars, they just strapped straight over the top of them. They didn't leave a gap. The strap just covers them. So I'll do the same. The tape lines here show approximately where the straps will go. I'm going to use 2 straps because obviously that clears the exhaust, and it'll clear everything on the sides because you have to take into account throttle pedal mount, front cross member, rear suspension hanger, front lamps, mudguards, all sorts of things. But I think if that line is there, I can screw it onto here, obviously, which or even onto the chassis rail, but probably into the aluminium, and then on here down to the chassis rail, and that'll give me where my 2 straps go. I also do have little sprung catches for it, which will probably go on this. So this still worries me that this isn't really attached. It'd be good if I could come up with a way to actually attach this. Once it's all strapped down, it's not a problem. And what I might actually do is make a block, effectively a rubber block that goes behind this, that spaces it off. So when this is strapped on, it's pulled in tight. There will be the sort of either bonnet lacing, or some of them also had rubber. That seems to be what they did on 8075 when they restored it. I'm not sure if that's original or not, but like a P-shaped rubber strip, which is the same as I've got on the Austin 7. This kind of seal, where there's kind of a lip that covers that gap, so I could do that. But that's where we're at on this. Bootlet's good, nice and tight. I mean, that's tight even without a strap, but there'll be a single strap on this. Some of the cars, again, in period, had diagonal, two like crossed over straps. I think I should just be able to get away with one. It's not going to be centralized though because of the fuel filler, so it'll come in here. I think that'll be all right. But I need to make a way of actually making those louvres, and I'm going to play around with making a die, or a tool like a punch and a die type thing. I've got an idea. I might be able to use my press, because those panels are actually narrow enough to fit in here, just, I think. What's this? This is 15 inches, and I believe across this is 16 from memory. 17. So I can actually get the panels in there. I've been pulling out bits of steel. It would be really nice to make one that can actually shear through the metal. I need to experiment to see if that's possible. It is just aluminium, so it's soft. And I think if you make the punch and the die close enough so there's no overlap on the edge where you actually want to cut that, I think you should just be able to shear through the aluminium. If not, what you have to do is physically cut the slots, you know, using a thin slicing disc on the angle grinder, which I need to get some more of, but these things where it's about 1 millimeter wide, you just cut your slots and then press it through. That would be dead easy. I think if I was doing that, you could probably just use hardwood for the formers and that would last. I only have to make, what, 30 of them, something like that. Although it usually takes me multiple goes to do something, so let's double that number, but that's not too much. Yeah, I think that's it really. So I'm trying to film less. I'm getting a bit sick of filming everything, to be honest. I'm not trying to grow my YouTube channel. I really don't care if people subscribe or not. It's at that point where I've got a small group of people who are interested and they leave good comments. I'd like to leave it there. So I'll try and make these shorter. It's nearly 5:30 now. I'm standing in the middle of a massive mess, but I've been busy. I've been doing machining and looking at making a louvre press. And this is what I've come up with. How's the best way to explain this? I can take it all apart and show the different pieces, but basically there is a sort of cutting block, and this is just a lump of steel, and it's got the right sort of shape cut into it. I use the mill to do the straight edges to get really nice crisp straight edges, and then just files and flat disc on the angle grinder to make the shape. Basically that shape needs to be the inside shape that you want. The outer piece is 2 pieces of steel welded together. And the reason you have to do that is because you have to cut this hole out of it. And the easiest way to do that is start off with this thin back strip, cut out that notch, and then weld another piece onto it. And the spacing here, it's very thin at the back here because this lets you sort of stack up the louvres as you go. And then basically it's just like a shear and a press. I'm still playing with it to get it to work. These are some of my early experiments, and I may need to modify the shape of the little cutting part. It may be a little bit tight on the corners still. You can see it's tearing a little bit, and I like the shape. That's basically the shape I wanted, and I've gone for 7-inch long, which seemed close to what the original Riley size was, 3/4 of an inch wide and 1 inch apart. And that sets all your dimensions here. So the way this works, this collar bolts it to the, whatever this bit of the press is called. So this can rotate, of course. But then once these bolts are done up tight, it won't move. And I made this sort of platform just from some square tube and a piece of flat plate. And that fits between the legs of the press. So this doesn't move. To stop this moving, normally I have little pieces in here. That's what these are. To stop this rattling around, but this is jammed in tight between there. The way I did that was I cut these to length, cut that top plate to length, and basically tack welded it on the machine. So it's a really nice tight fit. But to account for any slight misalignment, this piece is bolted to this. There's tapped holes, and there's a couple of bolts that go up through the bottom. The holes in this plate are slightly oversized, which gives you some wiggle on this, and that lets you line it up. Basically, to set it up, you pump it down so this is, the 2 pieces are together. You push this hard up against this edge because you want no gap here so it can shear, and then you tighten up those 2 bolts from underneath. It's a really nice, quick, easy way to do it. And then to punch it, you can see this is why that gap at the back is small, so that you can pull the panel in like this. And then this is just a little 12-ton press. It's nothing special. Super cheap Chinese thing. They have a lot of slop in them, which is why I've modified mine. I put little plastic blocks in the ends here. Obviously, if you're doing this properly, you measure everything and you make sure you get it all nice. And when you're doing it, you would pull this panel in to make sure it doesn't slip, but this is just an experiment. So that's now gripping it, and then a couple of pumps, and it should go pop. There we go. And this is where I'm not sure my shape is quite right. Well, not my shape, but my depth. I think it's going down a little bit too far and tearing the corners. The next thing I do, just to help flatten it out, is sort of put another piece of flat bar on there, and you can squash it down again and just sort of even things out. I think the commercial ones have a sort of block on the back here, a sort of sprung-loaded thing that helps hold the panel flat, but this seems to work. It does make it a 2-step process, but I'm not doing hundreds of them. Not too bad. You can see it's just tearing the corner a little bit, so I do need to play with it a little bit more. But I think it's very promising. That looks really good. I'm not sure how long it's going to last. It is all just mild steel, but it is cutting aluminium. It's giving me nice crisp cuts. It's a little bit, looks a bit crooked. I think it does, it may be rocking a little bit. So I may actually need to put some shims under one end of this. I hadn't checked that alignment, to be honest. I think it's moved. Because there is a little bit of slop in the thing, so yeah, I think I might need to adjust it. But that kind of gives you the idea. Is it crooked? Yeah, it's crooked. You can see. And that's just the nature of this machine. So what I need is a piece of steel under there to shim it up. And then I should be able to cut these so they're even. But it pretty much worked first time. You can see these are my test pieces. I didn't do very many. And I was able to test it by just cutting half so I could line it up visually. And initially I didn't have enough clearance around the ends here. Obviously you need to leave at least the thickness of the material around the edges. No, I think that is going to work perfectly. And you can see my tape examples there, but there'll be a row of those along here. Probably about 9 of them. Because I use 7 inches, I don't think they'll fit in the front. It's a little bit too short, but that's okay. And then there'll be a line of 20 of these just all along one side. So it's taken me all day. I do have a massive mess to clean up because I was using coolant on the mill, which does make a big mess, but it cuts a lot nicer. Yeah, really pleased with that. This was one of my early tests where it's too thin a piece, so it just distorts because the edge at the back is too thin. But at least it proves that the shear part works. Bit of tweaking and I think that should be pretty good. These are the parts for this. There aren't really any plans for this, and I didn't bother showing making any of this. I just wanted to make it. There's plenty of other people online making them and showing how they've made them. I think pretty much everyone makes them to their own design with whatever they've got lying around. But they all seem to work. This was just some scrap. I think it's 10mm thick steel, 3/8. I just had it tacked together before and just on the edges, and about the second time I used it the tacks just broke, so I had to put in some deep welds here. I V'd these out, filled it up with weld, and then just used the flap disc to grind it flat. You can see simple slot, it's basically the shape of the louver. And then this is the punch part, and I just milled it out of a solid block. Obviously it's got about 3 different radiuses going on. There's the radius going this way, there's one that way. Or is it just 2? That way, oh, and that way, of course. So you can sort of see the shape of that. Nice square edge on the front. Hopefully it stays sharp enough to keep cutting. And that goes in there with a bit of clearance. And I couldn't find any actual numbers on how much clearance you should give it. I may need a little bit more to stop it tearing. Obviously you need at least the thickness of the material that you're punching through at either end. So I might actually sand a little bit more off the end there because it is just on the edge of tearing, I think. But that may also be me pushing them too far through. These ones are turning out fairly sloped because of the shape that I've got there. So if you wanted, you could modify that, I guess.
I just guessed on the depth for how big the opening should be. I don't know what that should be. Again, all of these things are, you basically do it the way you want to do it. You can get all sorts of shapes, all sorts of spacings, length, how the ends are curved, all that kind of thing. This is pretty close to how they look on the proper Rileys. And then this is just my base plate. My welds are a bit messy. I had to go over them. I didn't have the welder set properly and they weren't penetrating properly. I could always add a little bit on the inside, but I don't think I really need to. These are M8 bolts, and you can see the hole is oversized to give that tiny bit of adjustment that you need so that you can line this up on the machine. So I think what I'll do is I'll shim up one end to make sure this is all level. That could just be when I welded this on. Oh yeah, I can see a tiny gap there. This bar was actually galvanized and I didn't manage to get all the galv off the top, so it was a bit hard to weld. And then this sleeve thing I just machined down from a piece of solid bar until it fitted on my press. And then obviously this you have to insert at an angle in the machine like that and then tip it down. Same as the base plate. But it seems to work pretty well. This was my last attempt. I think I'm getting pretty close now. I might sand the inside a little bit just to make it a bit smoother so it doesn't leave so many marks on the inside of the panel, but that's not a big deal. And I've been using a bit of WD-40 to lubricate it. It's maybe still a little bit tight at that one end. You can see it's almost tearing all the way through there. But I don't think that's actually a problem. It's not. I guess maybe if it vibrates it could eventually crack there. So I'll adjust that a little bit. You can see the shape isn't exactly right yet either. But I mean, honestly, once there's a row of 20 of them along the side of the car, who's going to really look that closely? I did try doing a curved panel, but I did them upside down because I wasn't thinking. Although I think that's the way around they are in the tail of Bugattis. They go inwards, I think, like that. But yeah, it's working pretty well. There is a little bit of slop in the machine, which isn't helping. So I think maybe what I'll do is try and squeeze these in a little bit to try and get rid of some of that movement. Or maybe I could put some shims in there. I'm not sure. I think that'll help. The reason this was crooked is because this isn't a tight fit on this little pin, because that pin isn't accurately machined. So there is a bit of wobble on this. So you have to get it all nice and level and then tighten it up. And that seems to work pretty well. But, yeah, I think that's been worth all of the mess, I would say.